Welcome, everybody, and our usual guests in the gallery. Thank you very much, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this regular meeting of the Corporation of the Town of Lincoln, February 21st, 2017. Call the meeting to order, and we'll stand, please, for the national anthem. Thank you. Please be seated. We have all members of council here tonight. Councillor McPherson to my left, Councillor Rinjima, Councillor Petrieva, and Councillor McMillan. To my right, Councillor Foster, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Timmers, and Councillor Brunet. And we have staff that will be coming and going, and that includes Mike Kirkopoulos, the CAO, as well as Carrie Beatty, the Senior Communications Advisor. And in the at the back desk, we have Gary Del Bianco, the Deputy Clerk, as well as Dave Graham, the Director of Public Works, and Kathleen Dale, the Director of Planning. And to my right is Mr. William Kalasa, the Clerk of the Town of Lincoln. This is a great list that we have now. I don't have to be stumbling over the names anymore. Declarations of interest. Councillors, anyone? Very good. Could I have confirmation of the agenda, please? Any changes? Everyone agree with the agenda as circulated then? Thank you very much. First item on the agenda is the adoption of the minutes of Council's regular meeting of February the 6th, 2017. I have a motion moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that the minutes of the February 6, 2017 regular meeting of Council, including the confidential addendum thereto, be adopted as circulated. Are there any errors or omissions? Pleasure on the motion. The motion is carried. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Foster, that the minutes of the February 15, 2017 special meeting of Council be adopted as circulated. Are there any errors or omissions? Your pleasure on the motion? The motion is carried. Councillor Foster, is that a yes? Yeah. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, is there any business arising from the minutes? There being none, we'll move on to the mayor's report. We had a few interesting things going on in the community, and I'm sure the councillors also have information on their comings and goings. First of all, let me say that tomorrow is February 22nd is National Pink Day. So this is a day when pink is a good color to wear, to stand up and show your colors, if you will, and your conviction against bullying. So I encourage everyone who can pull out a pink shirt or a pink blouse to do that. On February the 11th, some of us attended, quite a few of us actually, from council and also in the community, and many of our staff went to the Niagara Ice Dogs game. Ice Dogs were playing the North Bay Battalion, and we had a special honor in recognizing a Beamsville resident by the name of Adam McMaster, who was playing for the North Bay Battalion. Unfortunately for the battalion, the Ice Dogs won 4-0, but it was still a proud moment to have one of our young men out there on the ice. This evening, I will be touching on some points that I made on this past Friday at the annual Politicians' Breakfast hosted by the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce, and I shared the podium that day with MP Dean Allison and MPP Sam Oosterhoff. It was a great turnover, well over 80 from Lincoln, and there were a few people from Grimsby as well, and beyond. As you know by now, I place a great deal of emphasis on the work plan as it contains many priorities identified by Lincoln citizens. And not only does Council reinforce our commitment through sticking to this agenda, but we can also see how changes are visible both organizationally and in community improvements. We're working on park amenities and beautification, green spaces and community gathering places. These are very important in a growing community. We're working on upgrades to emergency facilities with a new fire station and bringing citizens together through heritage and cultural activities, particularly this year with the Canada 150. We're providing quality service delivery, and this is an area where you tell us on a regular basis has improved immensely in the past 2 years, and we thank our staff immensely for their commitment to this goal. There are many opportunities that are open to councils to actually help our community reach its goals. And our collective goals contribute to the overall sustainability, and that is strength in numbers. So we look for fairness and equity across the town as opposed to achieving one-time goals. The growth in the community is very obvious, as is the projection of the 2,000 additional units that will be built over the next couple of years, the majority in Vineland at Prudhome's. Our population right now is just under 24,000, a change of 5.8% since 2011, and we're the fourth highest growth community in Niagara. Lincoln will grow just under 50% to over 32,000 in the next 15 years. And with new development and eventually the GO train stop, our community is shifting as well. Those migrating to Lincoln from other centers in Ontario have certain expectations: interconnectedness, recreation, arts, heritage, vibrant downtown cores, and walkable communities. These expectations challenge council and staff to think differently. First, to acknowledge our citizens who have contributed for all of these years to what Lincoln is today, and then ensuring that newcomers who have expectations also share in the support, share in supporting that success, and also to the future diversity of jobs and housing, and to a sustained future. Prosperity, and also minimizing the causes of poverty, the main ones being lack of housing, jobs, and education preparation. I spoke briefly about open and continued involvement with council and through large group discussions with your neighbors, and this is happening starting tonight with a visioning exercise, producing a statement that represents what Lincoln will look like, who will be living, working, learning, and playing here in the future. This all helps to our day-to-day and long-term decision-making. So you'll hear more about that. And if you want to join in, please call the town hall, and we will ensure that you become part of the process. Many people have been invited, and if you are interested as well, there's going to be an online survey in April, and we hope to have this project completed by June. The coldest night of the year walk is coming up on February the 25th, and this is a national walk for homelessness awareness. And we must admit, ladies and gentlemen, we have poverty in Lincoln. I don't think that we can circle this one any longer. And people and families are living in cars. We have people actually living in the escarpment during the summer in caves. And we have many people surfing from one family couch to another. It's real and it's painful for those who have held jobs, which now those jobs are gone, and they just can't seem to get a leg up. This year's walk will support the YWCA Grimsby Affordable Housing projects, and Lincoln benefits from those. So Lincoln, West Lincoln, and Grimsby are all participating. So we hope that you will either come out and walk and make a donation, or if you're not able to do that, to support the Lincoln team, and you can do that by calling 905-563-8205 and speaking with Andrea Chambers. And on that note, as always, I want you to remember that you live in the town of Lincoln, where everyone strives to be a good neighbor and children are encouraged to achieve their very best. Through my time at the beginning of each council meeting and other public engagements, I hope to send a message that lets people know that Lincoln will deliberately set itself apart by instilling consideration and a sense of achievement in our everyday lives. You are all part of those achievements. This is how we do it here. Many thanks on behalf of council. And now we move on to the regional councilors' report. We have no report this evening, but I think that with tomorrow's corporate services and planning coming up, we'll have plenty to report at the next meeting. And now I'll move on to councilors' reports, and I'm going to start with Councillor Brunet.
Thank you, Mary. I'll actually hold all my comments this evening for announcements. Thank you.
Very good. Councillor Timmers?
Thank you, Mary Easton. I was going to speak about the coldest night of the year as well. I will be walking on Saturday, and before I came down, I took a look to see where Team Lincoln is, and we're actually in 7th place. So we really need some sponsors. We got to get out there and beat some of our neighbor municipalities. I've also went to a really great event on February 15th at the 20 Valley School. It was an event, it was a fundraiser for Village of Hope, and it was called Warm Your Heart to Hunger. And they had about 200 walkers that walked the track for sponsorship, and then they had a soup competition from all different local restaurants. I have a list of the restaurants. There was Boo's Restaurant, Sheila's Diner, Grand Oak, Just Cooking, McGregor's, Green Lane Winery, and Vineland Estates. And Mary Easton and I got to sample all of the soups. They were absolutely delicious. The first prize went to Chef Justin Downs from Vineland Estates with his butternut squash soup. That was my number one favorite as well. The event raised over $5,000. So to a very, very good cause, and it was just fabulous. It was so well organized, and it's definitely going to be an annual event, so I'll be looking forward to that next year. I was at the chamber event at the Beacon. Heard all the great speakers. There was a very good turnout. was quite a big crowd. I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Thompson?
Nothing for me this evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Foster?
Just a couple of quick things. First of all, yes, I was attending the hockey game along with you down at the Meridian Centre. And I just wanted to mention I'm going, although not officially on behalf of the council, but I'm going to the Scotties this upcoming weekend. And I think that's just something, if people are interested, that's a tremendous use of that facility. It's absolutely ideally built to do a national competition such as that. So, and the other thing, just to add to what Councillor Timmers was saying, the Lincoln Rotary Club is also going out for the coldest night of the year as well. So I don't know if they're ahead of the town or not, but I know I've given my money to the Lincoln Rotary Club because my wife asked me to. So anyway, thank you. Well, unfortunately, I have to live soon.
We understand, Councillor. Councillor McMillan?
Nothing for me, Mayor.
Councillor Pachariva?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. Just one item. I attended the Niagara Sport Commission annual breakfast last Thursday, where they recognized Athlete of the Year, Team of the Year, Para-Athlete of the Year, and the Wise Guys handed out their Chuck Smith Trophy to Coach of the Year, and it was the first time the award was given, and it was given to John White, who has done a tremendous amount of work with young golfers in the Niagara Peninsula. And he organizes the Niagara Junior Tour, and was a very, very well-deserving recipient, and very humbled by the award. So it was a good day.
Good. Councillor Njima?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was going to say a little bit about the Chamber's Politicians Breakfast. Unfortunately, Bill Hodgson wasn't able to attend. He was ill. But we did have Dean Allison and, of course, Sam Oosterhoff, and, of course, yourself, Madam Mayor. And you spoke very well. I think you took up about 8 minutes of Bill's time, and you filled the time very well. You spoke about opportunities and challenges and what we've got cooking on all of our burners right now in Lincoln. And speaking to people afterwards at the breakfast, I know that you did pique interest in some of the attendees for investing in Lincoln, and I spoke to some people from the States who are interested in coming to talk to you about healthcare opportunities within Lincoln's borders. You may have heard from them already. And also, under announcements, I'll talk more about what the Chamber is going to be doing.
Very good. Councillor McPherson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Last week, the Downtown Beamsville BIA held their monthly meeting, and at that meeting, a motion was brought to elect a new executive, which is a significant move forward for the group, and we will be bringing that motion to council for approval. And I also attended the Politicians Breakfast, which was, I thought, a very, very good event, as was mentioned earlier, very well attended. With many of the local business folks and even folks from outside the area. And I also thought the three speeches were very well done, and a lot of information sharing, and very nice to see the three levels of government together for one event. It was well done. Thank you.
Yes, actually, now that I think of it, there were quite a few international visitors that day, and I think that's a little bit unusual, but I was talking with a couple of different people. Yeah, great. Well, thank you all very much. Again, very busy in the community. We have no delegations this evening, and we move on to correspondence, and Mr. Clerk will lead us through this.
Through you, Madam Mayor. This evening we have two items of correspondence before you regarding a proposal for the establishment of double direct councillors for the City of St. Catharines on Regional Council. This matter was originally brought to this council last fall as part of an overall staff report addressing some of the potential changes to the upcoming municipal elections arising from legislative amendments introduced by the province. And this was one of the items that was highlighted in that report. Essentially, what has happened is the City of St. Catharines approached the province of Ontario seeking authorization to make amendments to the Regional Municipality of Niagara Act that would permit its representatives to regional council to sit not only on regional council but on local council. That process started some time ago, and last fall staff identified that we were nearing a point in time where if the direction was being supported, the region would be approaching all the area municipalities to seek their opinion on the proposal, which would require a triple majority of all of Niagara's municipalities in order to carry for the St. Catharines change. The letter that you see in your package from the region of Niagara advises that the region has satisfied itself as to the appropriateness of the proposal, and it is seeking the positions of all the area municipalities on whether they would support regional council structure changing such that St. Catharines councillors sit both at the local level and at the regional level. So St. Catharines has gone to all the municipalities making that request, asking for their position. If I could, the first municipality to consider the request was the City of St. Catharines, the ones that originally made the proposal. You'll notice from the St. Catharines correspondence that they essentially changed their mind and are saying at this point in time they do not want to have local councillors also sitting on regional council. So at this stage, we still have the formal request from the region, and we have the position of the City of St. Catharines not to go further. We are still obliged to provide town comments to the original regional request. They have clearly indicated they would like to know what our positions are. To that effect, I can advise that in addition to St. Catharines voting not to go any further, both the City of Niagara Falls and Fort Erie have deferred. They've accepted the position taken by St. Catharines and have not supported the initiative going any further. At this stage, this matter really needs to come before council. That's why it's on your agenda this evening. And you essentially have two possible courses of action to take. Technically three, but we won't talk about the third one. The first option that you can do is you can simply receive both items of correspondence and leave it at that. So they're received as information and you take no further position. If you want your position to be clearly enunciated to the region, there is the option of also introducing the motion itself that St. Catharines, or sorry, that the region of Niagara has included in their correspondence. And if you wish to defer to the position of St. Catharines, you could vote that motion down. Motion lost. Do not carry it. Do not support it. That would put you officially in the books, formally in the books, as opposing it in accordance with the will of St. Catharines. That third option that I said you don't really want to go into is you could actually support the motion, which really flies in the face of the position that the City of St. Catharines has taken. So in a nutshell, those are the two items of correspondence you have before you. I can answer any questions if there are any. If there are not, I have two motions here that have been duly moved and seconded, receiving the correspondence as information only, and then it will be up to council to decide whether you want to take that formal step of introducing the motion proposed by the region and defeating it to reflect the position taken by the City of St. Catharines.
Councillor Foster.
So typically, when we have situations like this, we go back to staff and do a formal report coming back in for us. So first of all, I've always thought what St. Catharines was trying to do was a little goofy anyway. But the thing is that maybe we need to have maybe just more than just a whole bunch of opinions around the horseshoe at this point, and just have a staff report stating here's what's going on, and let us deal with it accordingly at one of our committee of the wholes in the not too distant future. Yeah, that's just a suggestion.
All right, thank you very much. Any other comments? Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Absolutely, I absolutely disagree with what Councillor Foster has said. If St. Catharines is not going to take this position, that they started out with this, and now they've changed their mind and saying no, that why then would we want to delay the decision any longer, refer it back to staff? We can make a decision tonight, and we can support what St. Catharines is saying by not supporting the proposed changes to the Region of Niagara Act.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pachuriba?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. I mean, the City of St. Catharines was trying to do something progressive, and they were on the right track, and then somehow it derailed because, from reading the reports and that, people got cold feet. I thought it was visionary. I thought it was something that would probably strengthen the position of openness and transparency around their council table, that they would be lock and step on what's going on at the region and at the city level. So, I mean, it seems fruitless to waste staff's time preparing a report on something that's already gone by the wayside. I would just receive it for information and leave it as that.
All right, anybody else have any additional comments? Mr. Clerk, would we have to decide now which choice we're going to make? First of all, let me just ask you quickly, in terms of Councillor Foster's suggestion, is there anyone, just by show of hands, Mr. Chair, or Mr. Clerk, can I do this? By show of hands, does anyone have any interest in a further staff report? Okay. So we have the choice of receiving for information or introducing the motion. Show of hands, receiving for information. Well, that would be the majority to have that motion. That makes things simple. Thank you. Okay, just a moment here. And, okay, so I have to read them both in. Councillor McMillan.
Madam Mayor, just a point of clarification. If in fact if we accept this motion that just received this for information, is that in fact doing the same thing as saying that we're not going to agree? Because now, even by receiving it for information, the region is not going to get the triple majority. Am I reading that correctly?
Through you, Madam Mayor, correct. By virtue of the decisions that have already been made by the larger municipalities in the region, the triple majority is technically out of the question already, regardless of what the town of Lincoln does. And by simply receiving as information, not putting council's support to the motion for change, we are not supporting that initiative.
So in fact, the motion is another way of saying no. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Clerk, just for clarity, I'm reading both of these motions.
Separately, yes.
Yeah.
The first one? Through you, Madam Mayor, the first motion deals with item of correspondence
different dates.
A from the region of Niagara, and
Yes.
the second motion deals with
City of St.
correspondence item
Catharines.
B. That's
Very
right.
good. Okay, thank you very much. All right, I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers, seconded by Councillor Brunet, that correspondence from the region of Niagara dated January 20th, 2017, regarding change to composition of regional council, double direct, be received as information. Your pleasure on the motion? And A motion moved by Councillor Timmers and seconded by Councillor Brunet that correspondence from the City of St. Catharines dated February 6, 2017 regarding a motion to change the composition of Regional Council double duty councillor be received as information. And your pleasure on the motion. The motion is carried. Thank you. Okay. We move on now to reports. And the first item is the infrastructure minutes of February 8th, page 16. I have a motion moved by Councillor Brunet and seconded by Councillor Timmers that the minutes of the Infrastructure Committee meeting of February the 8th, 2017 be adopted and the recommendations contained therein be approved and acted upon. Councillor Brunet?
Thank you, Mary Easton. So the first meeting of the infrastructure for 2017 took place February the 8th. All committee members were in attendance, as well as Councillors Rinjima and Timmers. We had two reports that evening. The first was PW 1701, which is a summary report from the Beamsville and Jordan Vineland distribution water systems for the calendar year of January 1st, 2016 to December 31st. Director Graham and Manager of Wastewater Adam Elcott presented an overview of the report and gave us a very in-depth PowerPoint presentation which detailed a number of things as well as some of the Ministry of the Environment inspection reports, the distribution systems that we look after in Lincoln. Just being my first chair meeting as Committee of Infrastructure, I just wanted to, as Chair Pachariva would always enforce some of our infrastructure and what's out there. So just for some of those residents at home, the Beamsville distribution water system services about 16,000 residents. The Jordan Vineland system, about 7,600 consumers. Within the two systems, we've got about 107 kilometers of water main, 711 fire hydrants, 822 valves, 3 booster pumping stations, and 1 bulk water filling station here located at the town hall that we maintain. Some of the legislative compliance that we talked about in terms of water quality testing. We talked about the number of complaints that we had received in 2016, 8 in the Beamsville system and 2 in the Jordan Vineland system. We had quite a bit of discussion about the backflow prevention, and Adam reported that we have increased and we have lowered the number of people that haven't committed to that, so we're closing the gap to hopefully one day having 100% compliance. We had quite a bit of discussion about water loss at the meeting, and currently our water loss for 2016 is estimated at 9.7% compared to 11% in 2015. This is a really good number. Provincially, anything below 10% is considered excellent. So we're doing a great job there, especially in light of the fact that 2016 was obviously a large drought, and so in terms of the draw on our water system, we were able to come through that remarkably well. We had quite a bit of discussion about moving forward and how our staff are stepping up to the plate in terms of classification upgrades from Class 2 to Class 3, so that as we move forward with our developments within the town, the new subdivisions, we're going to be adding up to 10 kilometers of new water mains. So we need to make sure that we're meeting all those requirements through staff and through legislation compliance. We talked about the rationale related to the development of the town's water system and waste and water charges as well. So there was a motion to accept that summary report, and it was carried. The second report was PW 1702. It was an amendment to restrictions for heavy vehicles on Quarry Road. Again, Director Graham provided a summary of that report, including consultation with some of the area residents and the efforts that have been used to accommodate the needs of local agricultural community with respect to discouraging heavy vehicular traffic on Quarry Road. So members, that we had quite a discussion about, how do we enforce that, administrative and also through enforcements, whether it be police or the ministry. We had quite a bit of discussion as well as potentially an implementation of, possibly identifying vehicular stickers to local farmers and the agricultural community. So we had quite a good discussion about that. At the end of the day, there was a motion brought forward by Committee Member McMillan, seconded by J.D. Pachariva, that we accept this for this report for information, and that Council amend the Town of Lincoln Bylaw 2015-50 to include the exemption for agricultural-related agricultural traffic in those areas, and that was carried that evening. We had quite a bit of councillor discussion. I believe Committee Member Councillor McPherson raised some concerns about the Jordan area improvement, environmental assessment, to get an update from Director Graham. We had some discussions about the 13th Street improvements in the PIC that's coming up in March. I believe Committee Member Easton, Mayor Easton, brought some tabling for some discussions to get an update from Director Graham on the Mountain View Road restoration and how that wind project is sitting in terms of our warranty and when that period begins and how we are sitting there. There was discussion about traffic issues which continue to take place in Lincoln Square. We had considerable discussion there and some of the calming measures that we could potentially be looking at in terms of portable speed bumps and the painting of stop signs similar to what we've done on Lincoln Avenue. There was discussion about potential excessive water on Durham Road at Regional Road 81 around the roundabout, and Councillor Pachariva took his liberties as not being the chair to ask a number of questions in terms of Zimmerman Road, Phillip Road, winter operations, snow removal, the installation of a private lane sign up around Zimmerman Road. We had discussion about vehicular construction traffic in any of the future construction in Lincoln Square with the townhouses, as well as the upcoming Vista Ridge, and the importance of making sure we define those construction traffic areas. And the last thing we kind of talked about was the importance of planning for and identifying these routes, so we can limit that for the residents that are in there. And again, there was a notice of motion that evening from Councillor Pachariva that he has an intention to introduce a motion at our next infrastructure meeting proposing that the Town of Lincoln work with the region of Niagara on one of his pet peeves about a living snow fence program. And that was about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, if I could, under the councillor inquiries, under the construction vehicle traffic issues, I believe that that needs to be more accurate. It really was, Vista Ridge has not begun, so they are not violating the current construction routes, but what we were doing was ensuring compliance overall. So I think that should be adjusted so that we're not penalizing them for something that isn't in violation.
Yes, and if I indicated in any way that they were, but there was discussion that, as we go forward with construction activities, that we make sure that we mitigate anything for the residents there and that we discuss this well in advance. So appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pachariva?
Yeah, Your Worship, through you, I was going to mention the same thing. Like we had talked about, Lincoln Square and then potentially getting ahead of the future developments. And just a point of clarification too, the excessive water on Durham Road isn't at Regional Road number 81 and the new traffic circle, but is across from Parker Hannafin and where the buses park, just north of Durham Automotive. So there's a driveway there that accesses where, the buses are parking, and that's where the excessive water is coming out, and it's causing premature failure of the road there. So it's been going on for a couple of years, but with the heavy rains a couple of weeks ago, it was very apparent where it was coming from. Wasn't heading to the ditch where it's supposed to be, and in order to keep the good roads good, we need to have the water off of the road surface in a proper crown and have it in the ditch. So that's where it is. The roundabout is lovely. We just need to get some more plantings there.
All right. Councillor Njima.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question. I attended that night, but I'm not a committee member. There's the bylaws at the end of the agenda here about the restrictions to heavy traffic, to truck traffic on Quarry Road. And I'm reading in the bylaw the way that the local agricultural vehicles were accepted from the restriction is that it's written like this. Heavy vehicles shall not include, number 5, agricultural related vehicles operating in rural areas. And then it goes on to define rural area as an area of the town of Lincoln located outside any defined urban boundary as defined by the town of Lincoln official plan. So I'm just confirmation, is that what committee's intent was? I don't remember really coming down to that definition, but just confirmation that that was committee's intent.
Could you be clear, Councillor, what page are you finding?
So the bylaw is at the very, let me see, page 93 of tonight's package.
Yes. What page are you on?
At the very end of bylaw 2017-08 on page 93.
Okay. Where are you finding those words on the page?
Those words are at the end of
under item C?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
B, the end of B, and C.
Okay. All right. Mr. Clerk, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The wording for that exemption is actually sourced right from the staff report, PW 17-02, contained in the Infrastructure Committee agenda from February 8th. And the staff report speaks to the recommendation that, and I quote, "This will be accomplished by amending the definition of heavy vehicle in the bylaw to exclude vehicles operating for agricultural purposes in non-urban areas of Lincoln." So we included that exact wording in the amending bylaw. Unfortunately, non-urban areas is an undefined term, and we had to include a definition for that. And we did so by making reference to the town's other planning documents which contain the definition of non-urban area. So that is exactly where the terminology for that bylaw came from.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I know that committee talked about that had an extensive discussion about it, and I like the definition in here. I just wanted to make sure that everybody else on committee was happy with it.
Any other comments to that definition? Nothing? Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? All right. That being the case, I've read the motion. Your pleasure on the motion. Motion is carried. We'll move on to the public meeting minutes of February 13th. Moved by Councillor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Foster that the minutes of the public meeting of February 13th, 2017 be received. Your pleasure on the motion? The motion is carried. The Planning and Development Committee minutes of February 13th, moved by Councillor Foster and seconded by Councillor Brunet, that the minutes of the February 13th, 2017 Planning Committee meeting be adopted and the recommendations contained therein be approved and acted upon, with the exception of motions PLN 2017-08 and PLN 2017-09, which shall be lifted to be dealt with separately. Now, who's lifting? Councillor Foster? Is this your doing? Yes. Very good. Would you like to, I take it that you have new information.
Well, actually, first and foremost, we need some help from the clerk here. How should we process this? Because normally we would go through the rest of the minutes and then deal with the other motions separate, so.
All right. Is that what you're suggesting, Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, procedurally, you can deal with all of the minutes with the exception of those two motions, which we'll deal with after the rest of the minutes are done.
Okay.
And I do have those two motions which are being lifted to be dealt with separately, and I will pass them to you immediately following the rest of the minutes.
Okay, so we're voting now to have the, we're voting on the minutes with the exception of those two reports, 2017-08 and 2017-09. Pleasure on the motion? Yes, I'm sorry. Yes. Thank you, Councillor.
No problem, Madam Mayor. It kind of felt like my first meeting as chair of this committee. It was kind of all over the place. Anyway, thank you for the opportunity to speak. First of all, we had some delegations that evening with regards to one of the reports that's being lifted. Regards to the property that's formerly known as Mr. Convenience at the end of Ontario Street at King. I guess I should leave those comments from that out. The next delegation was Mr. John Arians, who was presenting and showing draft plans on behalf of Agribur Ontario Incorporated regarding the Cherry Heights Extension development. And he talked about the internal and external traffic circulation patterns, on and off street parking, parkland, open space, as well as drainage. Some of the key points were the connectivity, such as the pedestrian corridors and the interfaces with the surrounding development in the existing neighborhoods. We had a report brought by staff with regards to the OMB appeal with the Cuesta Estates Winery Incorporated redevelopment of Maple Grove School and St. Helens Church properties into the brewery and distillery, namely Bench Brewing. That appeal was rejected by the OMB, and which is obviously in alignment with our new official plan, so that's a real positive win from the town's perspective, defending our official plan. Other reports were background reports on zoning bylaw amendment PL 2017-07 regarding Lezac Niagara Limited, which was the subject of one of the previous public meetings. Another report was a background report with regards to the zoning bylaw amendment application L 2017-04, which was regarding the Glasbergen application surrounding the allowance of a nanny suite on a property. That was also one of the public meetings that evening. We had a report on the draft plan of Common Elements condominium application with respect to Lincoln Square. Also, a report on the draft plan of subdivision with relation to Cherry Heights development, incorporating items discussed in the previous delegation by Mr. Arians. We also had a staff report on the update to the proposed parking policy and bylaw in order to implement what is known as AMPS, which is the town's administrative monetary penalty system, which is a process taking the parking ticket process out of the provincial courts. And then we had some, and we actually referred one of the reports, which was the minor changes to the Greenbelt Review and proposed policy changes to the Niagara Escarpment Commission to tonight's council meeting, so that the Committee of the Whole could actually get that information firsthand. We also had minutes introduced for the Active Transportation Advisory Committee meeting of December 15th, 2016. Doesn't seem like an awful lot on the bill, but certainly it took us to 11 o'clock. So, and that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. All right, any questions, anyone? Councilor McMillan?
Madam Chair, are we going to vote on the minutes? Because I think we need to vote on withdrawing those two items before we approve the minutes as presented.
Mr. Petrie?
And I was going to say the same thing, the point of order before you lift anything, you have to vote on the lifting. You don't just summarily lift it.
We have a motion here to lift.
We have to vote on that first before we hit it.
Okay,
Yes.
that's good.
Yeah,
That's right.
okay.
All right, so I have I'll read the motion again. That the, moved by Councillor Foster and seconded by Councillor Brunet, that the minutes of the February 13th, 2017 Planning Committee meeting be adopted and the recommendations contained therein be approved and acted upon, with the exception of motions PLN 2017-08, PLN 2017-09, which shall be lifted to be dealt with separately. Comments to the motion? Pleasure on the motion? Okay, just a moment here. Councillor Renchima, did you vote yes?
Yes.
And that left McMillan and Petcheriva and Brunet and Thompson. Well, the vote is lost then.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. I misunderstood the vote here. Like, I seconded this motion to have those two items listed. So
Right.
now, is that what we're voting?
I just asked who was voting in favor, and I had
Of allowing them,
of allowing them to be lifted.
I'm not voting in favor of that.
No, and I ended up with McMillan, Petcheriva, Brunet, and Thompson saying they were not voting in favor of it. And I had Timmers and Foster and McMillan and Renchima that voted in favor.
McPherson,
McMillan can't vote twice. We could.
you've got me in there twice.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, it's McPherson. Okay, so I have 4 and 4, okay? And so I'm now have to break the tie, correct? So I'm saying that I'm not supporting the lifting.
So, in other words, which sort of this council has sort of by normal process allowed motions to be brought forward to be discussed in addition. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's saying no, that this isn't appropriate.
Well,
Okay, that's fine.
we
No, the democracy is spoken, so.
Fine. Thank you very much. And the motion, I'm going to write down here. Just a moment.
Councilor Foster left at 20 minutes.
Excuse me, Counselor, are you excusing yourself?
I am.
Thank you.
That's a first. Don't slam the door against that one.
If you want to introduce this one, this is the next one.
Okay. Sorry, councillors, I know that we weren't doing a recorded vote, but I am recording the vote for my... Okay, and the motion was lost to lift. We move on now to a motion Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Timmers, that the minutes of the February 13th, 2017 Planning Committee meeting be adopted and the recommendations contained therein be approved and acted upon.
Do you want me to speak to the portion that I didn't speak to previously?
Yes.
So I will briefly speak to the delegation that came in, Mr. DeFilippis, who is a design consultant and agent for Mr. Ticcarelli, with regards to the former Mr. Convenience location at the end of Ontario Street on King. There was a very healthy discussion in and around that in the subsequent report that related to that particular delegation with regards to, let's see here, excuse me just a moment, the council's downtown parking strategy, the town initiatives in the area of complete streets, active transportation, and municipal transit, the site conditions limiting the ability of the applicant to provide additional on-site parking, and the actual information surrounding the parking that would be off-site. So that would be the completion of those minutes, Madam Mayor.
Are there any other questions to the motion?
Madam Chair.
Councillor Foster.
First of all, I apologize, but I have never seen anything like this before at this council in 18 years, so I just want to point out that it's a normal course of events that we talk about things if there's a request for them to be lifted. Secondly, on this particular issue that Dave has just talked about now, I still have concerns on the parking side of this. We do not have a parking policy in place. We do not have public transit in place. There are a lot of issues that are going on with this particular development. As I said in the meeting, I absolutely have no issue with us redeveloping that piece of property, and I'm really glad that the developer is going to go and do something. But I think we're going to get ourselves into trouble. I think Councillor Pachariva was the one, I think, that evening that said, well, you know, we screwed up over in Lincoln Square. Well, actually, we didn't screw up in Lincoln Square. We went through and we did all sorts of discussions on parking, and we made sure that parking was appropriate, and it still didn't turn out right. So anyway, I just want to be on record with this as basically saying, look, we're not following any of our rules around planning with this, none whatsoever. Okay, so and so be it, if this council's happy with that. But when the shit hits the fan, pardon my expression, we are going to have to make sure that we know and understand what's going on. So thank you.
Thank you for returning, Councillor Foster. Ladies and gentlemen, it isn't our intention to get into a major debate, and I'm not speaking for anybody in particular, but I attended the meeting, and I believe that with those in attendance that we had a very fulsome discussion. If there's any new information that anyone wants to put on the table, I would certainly entertain that. Other than that, I'll call the question then. Your pleasure on the motion? The motion is carried. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is report, Council Business Planning Committee of the Whole, Economic Development Minutes of February 15th. And I have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Njima, that the minutes of the February 15th, 2017 Council Business Planning Committee of the Whole, Economic Development meeting be adopted. The recommendations contained therein be approved and acted upon. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This was our inaugural meeting of the Council of the Whole Economic Development. All councillors in attendance that night. We had two delegations. The first delegation was from Brock University. We had Dr. Tom Travis, the interim president, and Dr. Ryan Plummer of the Environmental Sustainability Research Center joined us, and we signed a memorandum of understanding. The partnership that we've signed into will identify projects that will benefit both Brock and the town of Lincoln. On the Brock side, it will provide educational opportunities for students from Brock, and for us, we're looking for, advancing our economic, social, and community development. So it's just a win-win for both the town and for Brock, and very exciting to kick off our Economic Development Committee with a memorandum of understanding such as this. So it was a great start. We then heard from the Niagara Workforce Planning Board. We had Mr. Mario DiDavitis, who is the CEO, and Mr. Adam Durant, who is the research manager. And they provided us a presentation outlining the mandate of the organization and detail the various types of data that they've collected and analyzed around labor and employment. They are looking for local partners to work with, and we did have a very full council discussion. I think we probably went for an hour or an hour and 15 minutes on that item, but it was of interest to all, especially since the information was really coming out of the 2016 census, so it was pretty up to date. So it was a very good discussion to get into that night. Under reports, we had Valerie Coons, who is the manager of strategic initiatives from the Niagara region, joined us, and Valerie outlined their mandate and to promote Niagara on a global scale and to work closely with the 12 municipalities within the region, encouraging investment and in encouraging travel to the region. So again, another very timely presentation for this committee. And we know that we are only better if we are working in concert with the region on economic development. We then went into reports, and the second report was report 1701, Economic Development in Lincoln. This was a report that was put together by our CEO, Mike Kirkopoulos, and I summarized the report in Mike's absence, really summarizing down to the role of the proposed Economic Development Officer to build out a work plan and strategy for the economic development of Lincoln. We had an information update with regards to transit. Our our senior communications advisor, Carrie Beatty, provided an overview of the current transit trends in Niagara. And then we got into a fairly good discussion around both intermunicipal transit and municipal transit. And being as it was getting late in the evening, we had been together for, at that time, about 4.5 hours. We decided that we would move to a report for transit that would come back to the next Economic Development Committee meeting, and we'd have a more fulsome, energetic discussion at that meeting. And finally, again, our senior communications advisor provided us with copies of the newly minted Town's 2016-17 Economic Development Overview brochure. Very nice piece. And also the Economic Incentives Program, also the pamphlet. So two very nice pieces that, again, kicked off our first Economic Development Committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions, Councillor Thompson?
Actually, less of a question and more of a comment. I was just so pleased to see Brock come in with that memorandum of understanding with the town. I think it's going to, begin the process of our triple helix of development of clusters. And excellent job on chairing that meeting, Councillor McPherson.
Anyone else? Councillor Patrieva.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, I'd just like to echo Councillor Thompson's comments too. I mean, it was truly exciting the next day, driving around, doing my sales calls, and the town of Lincoln and Brock's Memorandum of Understanding being the lead item on every one of the newscasts on 610 CKTB. Good news stories. Every half hour, they kept repeating it. I had goosebumps as I was driving because, you know what, it puts us on the way to thinking strategically. And then the icing on the cake was when they talked to Dr. Travers at their noon hour show. It was 1:30. And talking about the partnership and the opportunities that exist and the role that we played, with the graduate students on those items that they brought to us, and then just the countless opportunities that they have to do this research and provide it to us. And he made a point, point was taken to heart. Usually a consultant, you'll pay tens of thousands of dollars to do this. And these are students that are working their way through and doing a master's or doing a PhD and doing it because they need to do the research. So we're gaining, tenfold. So it was really, really heartwarming to hear that kind of talk about the town and the partnership and all of this coming on the heels of our very first economic development meeting. So long overdue.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? All right. I'll just note, Mr. Chairman, that tomorrow at the regional planning meeting that the transit report that Councillor Foster questioned me about will be coming forward, and we'll be entertaining that. And once that meeting is over, I'll circulate. There's 2 reports coming forward. I'll circulate them out. Your pleasure on the motion? The motion is carried. Our next report is PL 17-10. This being the proposed minor changes to the Greenbelt Review and the proposed policy changes to the Niagara Escarpment Plan. And as was noted earlier, it was referred from the February 13th meeting. I have a motion moved by Councillor Patrieva, seconded by Councillor McMillan, that report PL 17-10 regarding an update on Greenbelt boundary minor changes, Niagara Escarpment Plan policy changes be received as information. That for the reasons outlined in the report, it is hereby recommended that this report be adopted and the recommendations contained herein be approved. That a copy of this report be forwarded to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, that the Council of the Town of Lincoln request the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing to reconsider the town's previous request for changes to Greenbelt Plan maps, that a copy of this report be forwarded to the Niagara Escarpment Commission, that the Council of the Town of Lincoln request the Niagara Escarpment Commission to reconsider the town's previous request for changes to the Niagara Escarpment Plan maps, and that a copy of this report be forwarded to the region of Niagara. Mr. Karkopoulos, are you speaking to this, or is Ms. Dale?
Director Dale will be, Your Worship.
Go ahead, Director.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In regards to this particular report, as committee and council is aware, between the town and the region, a number of reports have been presented to committee and have been provided to the province. In regards to the Greenbelt Plan, there were no changes to the Greenbelt Plan boundaries within the town of Lincoln. So basically, the province, as far as mapping goes, did not consider any of the town's requests. We don't know at this time what policy changes they're proposing to the Greenbelt Plan. We commented on that previously, but the revised policies have not been published. Just for committees or council's information, we had asked for a number of things. We had areas outside settlement plan boundaries that had existing uses, and under the Greenbelt Plan, the use, if it changes in time, has to be more in line with the Greenbelt plan, which when you have a lot of existing urban-type uses, that's not always possible. So we asked for some flexibilities in the policies. We have a number of areas where the boundaries, whether it's the Greenbelt plan boundary, the Niagara Escarpment plan boundary, where they go through part of a property, they go through buildings. So we asked for the opportunity for some minor refinement to those boundaries. There's probably, I think, 3 major asks that we were looking at. As council's aware, with the region, we're doing the Go Mobility Transit Station study. And as part of that, there's a secondary plan contemplated for the area around the future transit site, roughly behind Sobeys in Beamsville. So we had asked that consideration be given to expanding the boundaries to accommodate the transit initiative. That was not included. Another example was the Jordan Public School, where you've got an existing school, the majority of the buildings in the urban area, but parts of it are in the Greenbelt plan boundary. It didn't make sense for that to remain status quo because that property has some redevelopment potential. The other major issue was the area to the east of the Prudhome's urban area, where you've got some industrial uses, you've got a bunch of what I'm going to call estate-type development, you've got some commercial-type uses in there. In a situation like that, there's 2 options. One is you expand your urban area boundary, and have some flexibility in the Greenbelt plan to allow that to happen, or you have some policies, which we've not yet seen in the Greenbelt plan, that allows for some flexibility to deal with those matters sort of on the local level. So at this point, what we're trying to put forward is basically reiterate the town's existing position and and asking the province to reconsider the town's previous comments.
Thank you very much. Councillors, I would say that at a very high level, the information is certainly all there. And we certainly could ask Mr. Kirkopoulos, but I wonder at the level of public understanding if there is more that we can do. If we approve this, we'll be accepting this report, received for information. Would it be your pleasure to consider a further report that would enhance public understanding? Maybe I'll ask Mr. Kirkopoulos first, and then we can continue discussing what he has to say. Mr. Kirkopoulos, do you have any suggestions?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think as staff actually spoke today as we were looking at agendas moving forward, and I think anytime we can provide more information via public presentations to enhance the learning of the community on topics that are complex. I've yet had an opportunity to talk to Chair Foster as it relates to Committee of the Whole, but there may be an opportunity at a future Committee of the Whole for staff to provide a presentation and an overview just on the Greenbelt, the NEC, the NPCA, and just take us all through that kind of collective understanding of what these documents mean, what it means from a ministry perspective, the ministry's role. I know Councillor Foster's probably got some input that he can provide from an AMO perspective and how those things are shaping some of the broader discussions from a government relations and advocacy perspective at a provincial level. So my recommendation would be, I think you can absolutely approve the report this evening. Notwithstanding that, we'll be coming back at a future Committee of the Whole, and I think, in fairly short order, we could probably put something together for the March Committee of the Whole as we look at that agenda and discuss that with the chair and move forward with a broad-based presentation for council and the community at large.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Foster is the chair of the Committee of the Whole.
Yeah, well, just first of all, this particular report is an outstanding report. Mrs. Dale and the staff should be commended on this. In fact, we had mentioned it the other night, even though we delayed it off of that planning meeting, and that was just simply because that other meeting was going on way too late. So I would say to you that would be an excellent idea, outlining for all members of council to understand how all these things fit together. With, things, for instance, like the Niagara Escarpment Commission, we still have a motion on outstanding with our council basically saying that the province should look at getting rid of the NEC due to the fact that Greenbelt trumps it on practically everything. So it'd be nice for us to just get a real good overview and handle on all of this stuff, and I think it'll probably help us in decisions that we're making at the planning stage as well. So I think it's a great idea.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor McMillan?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This is extremely important stuff, and this needs to go on to the Minister of Municipal Affairs. And that's the basis of my question then, is if we prove this tonight and then also suggest that we will have a further study period for council on this particular, these particular items, would that further study then delay any of this getting to the minister right away? Because if it does, I think that's wrong. This needs to go forward to the minister, and we can follow that up with more council education, but not delay the whole process.
Mr. Kirkopoulos?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the council, I think that's our intention. I think my thought would be approve it this evening. Let's get this to the minister and the ministry in terms of any comments that we have, and then moving forward at next month's committee of the whole, go through a more public education or an education both for the community and council.
Any other comments? Councillor Njima.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So again, I thought it was a really good report too. There's a lot of information. It was well written, and the first 20 pages were full of a lot of information, and it flowed nicely, and I got a lot out of it. So essentially, the two of the wins that we got were Albright Manor and the parcel at the corner of Victoria and King and Vineland, right? So we can be happy about that because some municipalities got nothing. And I think they've asked for a deadline of February 27th to get this in. So I agree we should get it in. And looking forward to further discussion. My question is this, through to the Director of Planning. So it's every 10 years, I'm assuming that these plans are proposed to be reviewed. Is the next plan review of all these plans scheduled for 2025? And if so, what opportunities lie between now and then for further discussion?
Ms. Dale?
Madam Mayor, in regards to the inquiry, the province does review these documents every 10 years. That's not to say that there may not be changes made by the province to some of these documents. Before that, those 10 years are up, very similar to when a municipality does an official plan. You don't necessarily wait for your review of the official plan if issues come up and you need to address them. In regards to opportunities, I suspect that when you're looking at maybe wholesale or large changes to these documents, the opportunity is probably going to be limited to the province's 10-year review of those documents.
Okay, does that help?
Yes, can I ask for clarification?
Yes.
So not necessarily plan reviews, but expansions to the urban boundary. If we had other questions or other changes that we wanted to make between now and then, what's the process for that?
Ms. Dale?
Okay. Okay, in regards to changes to the urban area boundary, the way the policies are currently written in both the Greenbelt Plan draft policies that previously were the subject of a staff report in the fall, and the growth plan, there is no provision in either of those documents to expand any of the town's urban area boundaries onto lands that are considered specialty crop lands. And that's the way the policies are currently in their draft form. So the way the policies are written now, you don't have any, the council doesn't have any opportunities to expand your urban area boundaries because it's very, very strict in the current wording. If there, see what is being asked for was some minor flexibility to allow minor boundary changes, not large-scale changes, to address the transit initiative, to address the situation like where Moyer Depot is, for example, the Jordan Public School, address those types of issues. There isn't right now any opportunity to even address those types of issues. So in order to expand your urban area boundaries, you have to have a number of things happen. You have to get the province to agree to allow you to do that, whether through some sort of mechanism in their policies. The next step is the region, the boundaries are allocated by the region of Niagara. So all of the growth is allocated at the upper tier level. So the region, through its comprehensive review, would have to look and see if there is the opportunity to expand boundaries, where should that growth occur? And if all of our ducks were lined up and we had the province less restrictive and the region was to agree that maybe the boundaries should be adjusted in place A or place B, then the last step in the process would be for the town to amend its official plan. Currently, though, the way the provincial policies are set up, there is no opportunity right now.
Thank you, Mrs. Dale, and that's one of our asks when we send this back. Now, one of our asks is for flexibility for the specialty crop areas, correct?
Yes, what is being requested is some flexibility to do some minor changes to the boundary and to address some of these unusual circumstances.
Okay, thank you.
And you're specifically talking about specialty crop areas which haven't been used for specialty crops for decades, probably. Is that correct, Ms. Dale?
Yes, Madam Mayor. My understanding of it is even if it's not being used for specialty crop, it's
Right.
still designated by the province as a specialty crop area.
Right. Okay, and it's my understanding that they're just not opening the door on that, period.
Not at this time.
It would be really quite an exciting flurry.
Can I ask one more question? So we approve this tonight and we submit these further, will there be opportunity for further input after we have our discussion in March? Or is February 27th? What is the
Ms. Dale,
significance
do
of
you
the
have
February
any-
27th deadline?
Do you have anything to add?
Madam Mayor, in regards to the February 27th deadline, the province has said we've made some changes to the Greenbelt Plan. We would like your comments on there. So this is the opportunity for the town, again, to advise the province there are some minor changes that the town would like to see to its boundaries. So this is one of your opportunities. I suspect you're getting to the end of your opportunities to make comments to the province. And the deadline is February 27th.
Are we getting to the end or is that the end?
It looks like it'll be the end for this.
It looks like it'll be the end unless there's further consultation by the province.
I have a question, Ms. Dale, regarding the transit on employment lands. Can you give us a little bit of, is there any, I mean, it was pretty cut and dried what they said, but is that one of the ones that we could ask for reconsideration on, or is there something else that goes along with that one?
Madam Mayor, one of the town's asks was the area which has been identified as the future GO transit site in the town of Lincoln, which is roughly just north of Sobeys. And there's a plan being undertaken by the town and the region. And in order to facilitate transit, to get transit into Lincoln, because we are the second wave, we're not the first wave, we need to be able to increase the density in that area, have additional housing in the municipality. So our ask in that area was some changes to the urban area boundaries to the east and to the southeast so that we could accommodate higher density development as well as potential mixed-use development through the secondary plan process.
Okay. They denied that. And that's their standard answer for all employment lands, is that correct?
Madam Mayor, yes, that's my understanding, that's correct.
Okay. Mr. Kirkopoulos, is it your belief that this is the end of the story on employment lands, or is it like some of the other matters regarding public safety, et cetera, where reconsideration is a possibility?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think technically this is probably it. I think, with provincial governments and ministries, I think there's always opportunities and there's always one-offs. I can tell you our friends to the west, Grimsby, are finding some challenges with the Greenbelt as well, specifically around, they're in phase 1 of the GO Transit expansion and looking at the lands around it, and I think there's ongoing conversations. So at this point, I think, technically my answer would be yes, but I think there's always a small door open. I think we have a very good relationship with both the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and the Ministry of Housing as we look at some creative ways and some specific projects in town that may fall partially within the Greenbelt and partially not. And so I think they're always looking for opportunities to see where we can find some sort of compromise. But I would tell you, I think for the most part, in terms of wholesale, what's in, what's out, this is it.
Thank you very much. All right, now we have Councillor Pachariva.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, maybe to Ms. Dale. Just wondering, too, if there's, for this February 27th deadline, we have identified those 3 places. Wondering if there's any possibility of the extension, of the Greenbelt, or looking at areas where there's dead-end water mains. So having the ability to loop the system. So we've got a dead-end water main on Hillside Drive. We have a dead-end water main on Aberdeen. The Greenbelt prevents you from extending water mains, water lines into the protected countryside. But the squaring off of the urban boundary in the southeast quadrant would allow the water system then to be looped. So rather than putting onerous pressure on the water staff to go out there and test and flush and do that, a simple extension of a few hundred meters would allow the system to be looped, especially as we're adding all of these housing units and we're going to go from a class 2 to a class 3 system. I just think that's another rationale to say, you know what, we need some flexibility. And it might be a thing that we look at as we go forward in the ask. Maybe that's a question too to Mr. Graham and his thoughts on it.
All right, Ms. Dale, is there anything from a planning perspective that you can add?
Madam Mayor, I think it's when we write back to the ministry, I mean, the discussion we had with provincial staff is don't just send in the report. Prepare a pretty comprehensive, covering letter that goes with the report, some larger maps so they can actually see the properties. So I think those are the types of things that could be added to the covering letter that goes out with the staff report.
Okay, Mr. Graham, anything that you would add?
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, I think Kathleen's got a good plan to identify that. So,
very good.
Thanks.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a comment around Jordan Public School, and just so disappointing that we've got a school that's basically split in half with the boundary, and we've got an empty school now that's falling apart. We've got some of the windows boarded up now, and it's falling into disrepair, and without some kind of rezoning, I'm sure there's little or no incentive for for the owner to be developing, and it just seems like a waste. In that we've obviously had a piece of property here that hasn't changed in years and years and years. There's been, I don't think there's ever been farming done on the property, and yet, we're held by this decision that it basically sits. So just a comment that it just doesn't make sense that particular site. I mean, even if you squared some of it off so that you could get something to then develop. There today, I mean, it runs diagonal to the Regional Road 81, and it just sits there. So, just frustration with some of the process here, and that we've got a piece of property that sits right on the wine route and is obviously falling apart, and yet we can't get any kind of movement with this legislation.
Mr. Kirkopoulos, do you have anything to add, please?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, I think this is one of those that I know I've had conversations with the ministry on specifically, and some of the lands within Jordan are subject to the Niagara Escarpment part of the Greenbelt, and so that is subject to a slightly different process. So anyone can bring a proposal forward in order to address that. So when I said to the mayor, it's not as black and white as it relates to all things having to do with the Greenbelt, this is one of those anomalies where, you know, if there was a proposal that was brought forward, and I know I've raised this one because it is a very unique property, and the way the line cuts through that property in terms of the back of the school and the parking lot, in terms of what's in and what's out, it is one that that we can look at differently. Now, it's incumbent upon whoever owns the property to bring forward a proposal in order to deal with that. But, you know, then the commission could look at providing recommendations to the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry and potentially do something different on that property. But really that's something that, you know, as we work through and maybe reaching out and trying to be a little bit more proactive with the owner of that particular property and looking at what can be done.
Is that satisfactory, Councillor?
Yes, that's good. I absolutely agree that if we can reach out to that property owner, maybe we can get the thing going. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? I have a quick question, Ms. Dale, about some applications that were made, but there wasn't, it seems that there wasn't enough information provided, and now I can't lay my hands on it. Does that sound familiar? They were specific property owners making the request. I thought it was at the beginning, and it almost appeared as if they could have had some more assistance to make their application more complete. I won't waste your time on it, but I guess that's something that we could look at to ensure that anyone that does have a specific request, that they get, that they're complete in their ask. Just a moment. No, I'm sorry, I can't lay my hands on it. All right. Any other further discussion on this matter? All right, I've read the motion. There's nothing that's changed in the motion except for the instructions, the verbal instructions to staff to bring this forward. We have the agreement of the Chair of Committee of the Whole, and that will happen accordingly. So your pleasure on the motion? The motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Dale, for it was a really excellent report, and after all that time and all the comings and goings, it certainly wasn't the easiest thing to put together, I'm sure. We'll move on to the confirmation of compliance with Section 34 of the Planning Act, number 14. I have a motion moved by Councillor Pachariva, seconded by Councillor McMillan. The Council has considered the requirements of paragraph 17 of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, and concludes that no further notice of public meeting is required in the matter of the following proposed amendments to zoning bylaw number 93-14-Z1. A, number 2017-09-Z486, to amend zoning bylaw number 93-14-Z1 as amended 154-1189 Ontario, Inc. And B, number 2017-11-Z487, to amend zoning bylaw number 93-14-Z1 as amended Cherry Heights Extension. Any questions to the motion? Your pleasure on the motion? The motion is carried. And we have bylaws. Moved by Councillor McMillan, seconded by Councillor Pachariva, that leave be given to introduce the following bylaws. Number 2017-08, to amend bylaw 2015-50, a bylaw to regulate heavy traffic on certain highways in the town of Lincoln. Number 2017-09-Z486, to amend zoning bylaw number 93-14-Z1 as amended, 1541189 Ontario, Inc. Number 2017-10, a bylaw to adopt amendment number 1 to the official plan for the town of Lincoln, Agrabur, Ontario, Inc., Cherry Heights Extension. Number 2017-11-Z487, to amend zoning bylaw number 93-14-Z1 as amended, Cherry Heights Extension. Number 2017-12, to authorize a site plan assumption agreement with Niagara North Vacant Land Condominium Corporation, number 262, and Gray Forest Homes Limited. Number 2017-13, to exempt certain lands in Registered Plan 30M-420 from part lot control pursuant to Section 50 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Lincoln Square, Block 114. Councillors, any questions to the motion? Your pleasure on the motion? The motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Pachariva, seconded by Councillor McMillan, that bylaws number 2017-08, 09-Z486, 2017-10, 2017-11-Z487, 2017-12, and 2017-13 read a first time, be now read a second and third time, and finally passed, and that the mayor and clerk sign and seal the said bylaw. Pleasure on the motion. Motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is councillor inquiry, starting with Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have no inquiries.
Councillor Rinchima.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question about, and information for this can come to another committee if that's appropriate. There were some emails going around with concern about an agreement we have for with the Bruce Trail Conservancy, and I'm not sure whether there was misinformation that was going around. So I'm looking for clarification on that. There was some concern that an agreement that we had was being rescinded.
Councillor, Mr. Kirkopoulos.
Through you, Madam Mayor, it will be coming to a future committee. It'll likely be Finance and Admin, where the initial approval for the Bruce Trail Conservancy was given, although staff are determining what would be the appropriate committee. I think we've wrestled between SRC and Finance and Admin, but the agreement initially came through Finance and Admin. There have been some issues brought forward by both sides. I've met with a number of community stakeholders who have expressed some concern in terms of where the existing amended trail is going and how that's impacting residents and how that's impacting some safety issues in terms of it crossing their properties. I've also met with the Bruce Trail Conservancy. I'm looking to find and if possible broker a solution that would look at a slightly deviated trail from where it currently sits in order to address concerns of both sides, and it'll be something that I'll be working on with staff over the next few days and weeks. And then likely coming back to a future committee meeting with a decision, a final decision once and for all.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And Councillor Pachariva?
Councillor Brunet is going to raise it, so.
Councillor McMillan? Councillor Brunet?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have two inquiries, if I could. The first is with regards to intermunicipal transit. So as this council's representative on the Regional Transportation Steering Committee, I've done my best through 2016 to come back and advise and report this this council on, what's happening at the regional transportation. There's been some public meetings on, transportation that involves, St. Catharines and those areas. And we have a number of members of this council have attended the Grimsby meetings. And they are certainly ahead of this council in terms of where they are in the needle. As most of us are aware, it's imminent any day, mid-February. Dylan is going to come back with a report to the Grimsby Council on a recommendation on intermunicipal transit and their bus. So, we have a lot of things that every time we bring up for discussion, intermunicipal transit, mobility freedom for our residents are coming up. So our CAO has recently told us that we are looking at a potential pilot project that we're looking at launching in September. But I guess my question is, we continue to hear from Chair Quirk representing Grimsby that there potentially is a desire for West Lincoln, Grimsby, and Lincoln to form some sort of intermunicipal transit in this west end of Niagara. So I guess my question under councillor inquiries, in light of the CAO acknowledging that we're looking at a pilot project, this is only February. What are we intending to do? Quite honestly, I guess where I'm coming from is to go to that meeting and to see the report from Dylan with the line coming to Lincoln, with them standing in front of residents telling them that there is a potential link to Lincoln and that Lincoln could potentially pay 40% of the cost, quite honestly caught me flat-footed and off guard and quite honestly asking questions. So I guess my question is, what are we as a council looking at doing to move this along between now and potentially September, where we look at a pilot project? I love the fact that we're looking at a pilot project, but if the recommendation that Dylan comes back next week comes to Grimsby Council and they're moving along, where is this council looking at in trying to come up with some solutions at giving our residents mobility freedom, completely understanding that there is no profit in transit, no different than running our parks and running our recreational facilities. But I guess, I'm looking for a little bit of direction. I'll be going to our first transportation steering committee meeting on the 28th next week, and I'm sure there'll be some update on that. But through you, Madam Mayor, I'm just wondering if maybe the CAO could comment on that inquiry.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kirkopoulos?
Through you, Madam Mayor, let me try to address that in a couple of ways. I wasn't at the Economic Development and Planning meeting last week, and so I apologize that I wasn't able to provide a little bit of context. So there is a intermunicipal transit initiative that Niagara Region, with the three major municipalities, Welland, St. Catharines, and Niagara Falls, are coming forward with, and that is something that they're looking at in terms of providing transit holistically in the future for the entire Niagara region. What that looks like in terms of where the lines are, how those lines are running, the frequency of the lines is yet to be determined. I know there were a number of questions around that and how the tax dollars from a regional perspective that every local area municipality contributes, what is the benefit to the local area municipality? And I have spoken with Chair McPherson in terms of our economic development April agenda, in terms of having an update on the Niagara region IMT, and we'll be reaching out to Mayor Sendzik, who's the political lead, and CAO Ken Todd, who's the CAO lead on that particular project. Councillor, you're correct that we had talked about, and you'll recall that I did a tour of what I'm going to call Pelham's local transit pilot, something that they had worked with the province of Ontario to receive some small amounts of funding, as well as Brock University and Niagara College. And that was very much a loop that was internal to their own community, that went to some key areas within the community: seniors facilities, grocery stores, medical offices, and so forth. Very much an internal loop. It took about an hour. There was accessibility for those persons with disabilities, and it was something that was very catered internally. As it relates to Dillon and what Grimsby is doing, I can tell you that Dillon interviewed all the CAOs. They definitely interviewed the Niagara West CAOs in terms of what our interest was or what conversations we had from a transit perspective. At no point in time in that conversation was there a discussion in terms of if Grimsby decided to go with the system, what the cost allocation or the cost sharing would be. The conversation was from a West Niagara perspective, did we believe in terms of ourselves and West Lincoln that our respective councils would be interested in having a conversation. And I think my response back at the time to Dillon was, yeah, absolutely. I think there's always an opportunity to have a discussion. If Grimsby's looking at providing a transit service of some sort, whether that be extensive as they're planning or whether that be a small service, I think there's always an opportunity to talk. Dillon was very clear that unless they were on the payroll, they weren't going to do any further analysis, and that was understandable. And that's really where the conversation ended. I can tell you, I know that early in my time here, I had set up a conversation with HSR, Hamilton Street Railway, which is the transit service provider in Hamilton, both from my familiarity with HSR, but also because they were looking at expanding their services. They'd been having conversations with Burlington and then had wanted to reach out to West Niagara. It was very much a preliminary staff-to-staff conversation between myself, the CAOs of the other two municipalities, being West Lincoln and Grimsby, and it was really just a conversation with Hamilton Street Railway to determine, as they went through their own analysis, having Dillon also doing their work for them, looking at their service, if it made sense to have transit services being provided into West Niagara. No different than the conversation I had with Dan Carnegie, who's the CAO of St. Catharines, looking at our community, which is really sandwiched between, Hamilton on the one side, St. Catharines on the other, in terms of two large municipalities. Those conversations, I can tell you, were high-level conversations. There wasn't a commitment to do anything. I am familiar with what Grimsby is doing and Grimsby is proposing. And I think, from the perspective of where we're at, I think we're able to listen. I think we're able to look at it. I'd be curious, and what I'd be coming back to you with is, what does 40% of that particular line look like, and is there even a desire for us to partner on that particular line? If there's some economies of scale in terms of looking at the kilometers that are within our community versus the kilometers that are within Grimsby, and that makes sense, and there's a line running along King, or there's a line going down Ontario, I think we would look to analyze that and then do some sort of cost-benefit ratio for you versus the pilot that we're looking at doing. I can tell you, and I think a number of councillors have attended those sessions in Grimsby, they're looking at larger, I'm going to call it larger infrastructure, larger buses, versus what we would be proposing in terms of a pilot project. We're looking at a much smaller bus. We're taking a more crawl, walk, run approach, I would suggest, versus what Grimsby is looking at doing. I think Grimsby's looking at GO. They're looking at proximity to Hamilton. They're looking at some other things they're hoping to achieve, and they're definitely taking a large leap in terms of getting into transit. Should there be success, or should there be support around that particular council table? So, I think the advice that I would be providing council, or the direction that I would hope to receive from council would be, we need to be aware of what's going on in Grimsby, but to commit to anything right now without looking at, what the benefit is to us. Again, cognizant that transit is not, is a subsidized service, absolutely. But to what level do we want to subsidize it? There are economies of scale and abilities where we partner with other municipalities, and that makes sense. It connects us to the larger hubs. I look at the hospital, I look at the Y, I look at other things, the new school that, may potentially be coming down the pipe. Those are all likely along that King Street corridor. So connecting, one municipality to the other municipality in terms of that flow always makes sense. That is something, though, that we can look to achieve through our own transit provision in terms of this pilot project. Those were definitely things that we were looking to do, and learnings that I took from Pelham, looking how it does cross into Welland, how it does connect to other particular areas. Again, things that we need to explore. So what we're coming back with to you in April at that committee of the whole is really a detailed look at that transit pilot to give council an appetite and an indication in terms of where we're going, an update on the Niagara Region intermunicipal municipal transit initiative, and I can definitely add to that. Some additional information as it relates to what Grimsby's looking at.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the CAO's comments. I appreciate the clarification. I guess all I'm saying is, you know, quite honestly, a number of us attended those workshops last year, and certainly I got the impression that Grimsby was going to be looking at something very similar to the Pelham Cares. You know, they were looking at Bradford, they were looking at West Gwillimbury, you know, communities that aren't much bigger than Lincoln. And to go to that last report and to hear Dylan at the microphone with that presentation and talking about like ridership of 65,000 people, and compared to Pelham, which I believe is like less than 3,000, like we're talking about two totally distinctly different models. And you know, the Dylan recommendation, you know, is talking, as you completely articulated, large buses. Like we're talking multi-million-dollar, you know, expenditures. And so I'm glad to hear you come out and say that. I don't know what's being discussed at the CAO level. I appreciate those comments. I look forward to the report in April. I guess all I'm saying is that I just don't want to be sitting here as a council and as a representative on regional transportation, sitting here waiting for a pilot project to be launched in September. So I appreciate your comments.
Mr. Kirkopoulos, I just want to reconfirm, it's April you're bringing the report?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we are bringing it to the Committee of the Whole, the Economic Development Committee of the Whole in April.
Okay, and let me ask the question then that Councillor Brunet asked. Once that report comes forward, what will we be doing between April and September?
Through you, Madam Mayor. I think there's a couple of things. You know, we'll have a better indication in terms of where Grimsby's at, and I think I'll be able to update council on that. We'll have a better indication on what's going on with respect to intermunicipal transit. Notwithstanding those two, we are going to be preparing, you know, what it'll look like to have our own pilot project, and hopefully get council support and council endorsement to proceed with that request for proposals and to go out and start mapping out what that looks like. There'll be some public consultation. We'll have to look at where we want to put stops. You know, I can tell you from the Pelham example that there is, you know, it'll be a fluid process. We're looking at a soft launch likely in the summer, you know, heading so that we can have some of the kinks worked out heading into the fall. That's definitely what we're looking at. Again, I've asked Pelham to provide me a lot of their learnings over the last years in terms of how the RFP was structured, in terms of the Pelham Cares model, in terms of sponsorship, in terms of, you know, things I think you know, when I did the tour and I shared with council, they didn't put permanent bus stops in place because they wanted to move them. Maybe it was 10 feet, you know, to the west or 10 feet to the east. I think all these things need to be worked out. We're starting from a place of not having a transit system at all to creating what is a very you know, early transit system, and to try to build, I think, you know, within the community some awareness around transit and the benefits of transit. So it is definitely, you know, we're going to be crawling for a bit, and we're going to be learning, I think, as we move forward. So our timeline is, you know, albeit it's only February now, there's a lot to get done in terms of being up and running for September.
Very good. All right, Councillor Brunet, are you satisfied?
I am, Madam.
Councillor Foster.
Yeah, just a quick comment on this too. And I like what the CAO is saying, but you know, where did Grimsby get the idea that we're paying 40% of this? And I think maybe there needs to be a discussion back and through from CAO to CAO, basically saying, guys, give it a rest. Like nothing's been decided at this council. But by the way, there is a history with Grimsby, and many of us have dealt with them a couple of times over the last number of years, where they come forward with an idea. You know, the Chamber of Commerce was a big one back a number of years ago, and the town of Lincoln said no. And we got pillarized in the media for not wanting to work together, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, let's just be really careful with this again as we're going down the line, and, to help you out too with your committee, so.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just, I also attended that meeting in Grimsby, and my take on where Grimsby was at with regards to Lincoln was it was very much at the consultant's level. It wasn't anywhere near the town of Grimsby yet. And they pitched a solid line through the town of Grimsby and a dotted line into Beamsville. So it was very much hypothetical. It was not, anywhere near where they were putting a bus into our town. And I'm sure that with the relationship that we've got at the CAO level and at the council level, that we would have those discussions well in advance. So. Okay,
thank you very much. Mr. Kirkopoulos, you had something more to add?
Through you, Madam Mayor, just that as we were discussing this now, I've reached out to my CAO colleagues in the West seeking further clarification as to how we were introduced. But I do agree with Councillor McPherson. I do believe in it is really a consultant-driven kind of idea and a notion, but nonetheless, we should make it clear that anything like this requires us to have a much more thorough conversation and explanation with our respective councils, whether that be West Lincoln, ourselves, and anybody else.
And it'll be a whole new subject again when we hear the report from the three larger cities. And, I've had discussions with Mayor Sendzik, but it's all conversation until it comes to the table and we make our decisions. All right, Councillor Brunet.
So, Madam Mayor, I had one more inquiry, if I could, and that is with regards to some of the discussions that we had at the Planning and Development Committee meeting of February the 13th. And I completely understand, we've discussed and voted on those minutes tonight. But I came here tonight, fully looking for some clarification. Over the last week, I've asked a lot of questions in terms of what the cash in lieu actually means and how that would work. And I have concerns. I think there's other councillors that have concerns. We have a park, Ashby Park, which has served a purpose to look after the residents in that area where that park was built, the Mountain View subdivision, from Hillside and down. We now have in front of us, the Cherrywood Heights subdivision with Agrabah, and I completely understand the discussion that took place at the committee meeting with regards to the fact that there will not be a park built specifically within that neighborhood. And I'm not here to discuss that, but I do have concerns. The Ashby Park, as it sits today, and I was trying to get clarification from Director Dale, but let's just throw a number out, 450 residents. We have a subdivision at Cherry Heights, which is in front of us, which we heard a number of 770. So my concern, and I know other councillors have the same concern, so typically, we're looking at a park, Ashby Park, that will be potentially servicing up to 1,100 or 1,200 residents. Arguably, take away Charles Daly Park and Lions Park as a community neighborhood park, it will be the largest destination park in terms of residents looking for amenities. So I have a concern, and if this isn't the point, I will take a back seat, but I would like to just, under inquiries, just kind of get some clarification in terms of how this is going to work, because I think we owe it to the residents that are going to be looking for a destination park, and certainly a number of us have gone out over this past week to look at where, the limits of where the Cherrywood subdivision would be versus the Mountain View subdivision, and there's no doubt that the Ashby Park can service those residents of the future Cherrywoods. There's no question about it. The proximity, I believe Councillor Pachariva drove it off, and it's 0.3 kilometers. So my only question through you, Madam Mayor, and possibly Director Dale could comment, or maybe the CAO, is specifically just a clarification or maybe a direction on how that cash in lieu that maybe normally would go to parkland dedication fees for, in this case, Cherrywood Heights, would typically go into a reserve for parks. If there's any way that this council can look where that money, that cash in lieu, can be specifically designated to Ashby Park and any improvements and development that park could potentially serve for both of those communities.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor. Now, Councillor McPherson, does your question relate in any way to Councillor Brunet's? Is it connected? Then you go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just in full support of Councillor Brunet's question, my concern is, our history is that we take these development charges in, they go into a reserve, and the parks don't get developed. And, we know it's that way at Prokich Park. We know it's that way at Serena Park. And here we've got, 600 or 700 people coming in the next couple of years. And, it's a park. I had to personally go over there. I didn't know the area well, so I went over there on the weekend and took a look at where Ashby Park is, and I could see the connection. But, I would really like to see those funds spent on Ashby Park. The developers' funds are spent directly on the park, and we get that park done.
Yes. What is your point of order?
Councillor inquiries, if I'm not mistaken, are things for us to be bringing forward and making suggestions back in and through. None of us were prepared this evening to have a discussion about anything around parks, and this was not on the agenda. So I thought councillor inquiries were to go back into staff, and we can go and make subsequent decisions. So I'm just curious,
You're correct.
So because this is becoming a debate, and none of us are prepared for this, so.
You're quite right.
I think that if I may, there was a lot of confusion around the planning meeting minutes tonight, and that was the opportunity that we had to present this. And we missed that opportunity because of all the confusion. So I'd still like to see this move forward in the minutes. We don't need to discuss the details around it, but I would say that in this particular case, with what went on tonight here, council inquiries, we do want to make this point.
All right, Mr. Clerk, can you give us some advice on the methods that we could use that fit our procedure bylaw that would allow us to discuss this or not?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there is a question being asked, and again, as indicated, the procedural bylaw provides that during the council inquiry session, questions may be posed, and if we are able to provide an answer on the spot, we will do so. If we are unable, as in staff or other members of council, are unable to provide a response that answers the inquiry, there's opportunity for that matter to come back at a future meeting with a report, with additional information. That information can be shared via, information reports that are circulated, whether via email or otherwise. So based on the inquiry that's been made regarding cash in lieu and the means of implementation or use of cash in lieu of parkland, and how it could apply to the greater development process, if perhaps the Director of Planning can provide a response that may address the inquiry. If not, it can come forward at a future meeting with a more fulsome report.
All right, Ms. Dale, do you have anything to add?
Madam Mayor, in regards to cash in lieu of parkland, what normally happens is where parkland is not being conveyed, a municipality obtains cash in lieu of parkland, and all of those funds go into a reserve fund which can be used to develop parks anywhere in the municipality. So in the case of this particular instance, there could be direction from council that any monies collected in this area be put towards Ashby Park as an example.
Thank you very much. Members of council, I'm going to ask Mr. Kirkopoulos to make some comments here, and maybe we can get this directed. It's a very important matter. Don't want to minimize it in any way. And Mr. Kirkopoulos.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think one of the comments I'm going to make in it, and it speaks to, I think, parks in general, and you've heard me say this, and I think SMT's heard me say this a number of times. You know, before we go building new parks, we need to look at our existing parks, and we need to make sure that the parks that we have the proper amenities, and we need to, you know, make sure that they're equipped properly to both satisfy the needs of the existing community as well as the growing communities. And I think that's what we're talking about when we look at Ashby Park as an example. I know in getting briefed from staff over the last number of days and into last week, as it relates to the Cherry Heights development and specifically Ashby Park, one of the comments was made that could service the Cherry Heights development, but that park requires additional investment. So I think, you know, what we're hearing, and I think what Kathleen has echoed in terms of the parkland dedication fees in lieu of parkland that are coming from Cherry Heights can absolutely be directed, you know, in order for us to upgrade and update what needs to happen at Ashby Park. I think those would be recommendations that we would be bringing forward to you anyways when we look through SRC and our other committees at what is required in order to make that a park that would be an appropriate park. I think Director Hussein a number of months ago, you know, brought to you some standards for each of our parks. When I look at what we're doing at Prokich now, when I look at Hillary Bald, when I look at Serena, I look at Ashby, Meadowwood, a couple of the other parks that are coming down the pipe that are going to require some investment. And I think the way we look to do that is through our parkland reserves and through some of these opportunities. And so absolutely, staff can come back at a future SRC committee specifically as it relates to that park in terms of Ashby and highlight for you what we'll be doing at that particular location in order to address, I think, some of the concerns we heard with respect to Cherry Heights.
So I think the question of the question was, can the money be, the cash in lieu be directed to the park? The answer was yes, it can. And I think, Mr. Kirkopoulos, are you suggesting that we would put this on the agenda for the next SRC?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm not sure if it's the next SRC, but we'll put it back for a future SRC agenda to look at. You know, I'm just cognizant of just the amount of work that staff had in needing to get, you know, the SRC in a good place, and I'm looking at both Dave and Kathleen in terms of just workload and you know, wanting to be cognizant of that.
Okay, so we're not going to discuss this anymore because we really needed to stick to the basic question. We did get some assurance that it would be directed. We need much more discussion about this. Unless there's an urgency that we need to express to Mr. Kirkopoulos about when that comes back. He's already given us some of the limitations of time. I don't know whether there's any flexibility there or not.
Madam Mayor, I'm quite comfortable with that. I completely apologize if my inquiry has gone beyond the boundaries of councillor inquiry, but I did not want to let that window go by. You know, we are talking about you know, this Cherry Heights, and I completely understand what we've talked about, but in light of everything, I just felt that it needed some dialogue. I did not want it to go beyond the boundary of councillor inquiries, and the response that I've received from the Director of Planning is more than sufficient. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm very sorry, Councillor Pachariba, but...
No, I have one inquiry, but I'll wait.
Do you have... Okay.
Yeah, but I'll wait.
All right. You're going to have to wait. Councillor Timmers.
You won't have to wait too long because I don't have any inquiries tonight.
Councillor Thompson.
And I'll go right along with that without any as well.
Councillor Foster.
Two quick things. One, a question through to staff. As you know, I'm the chair of the Association of the Municipalities Ontario Digital Task Force that's going on. which is essentially looking at open data and open and transparent governments across Ontario. I was wondering if perhaps maybe staff and Councillor Thompson and I might want to get together again at some point in time in the not too distant future. We were able to provide a little bit of advice on the IT side of things, you know, within some of these areas, and it might not be a bad thing at least to start there and, you know, bring it back to one of our committee of the whole meetings after that to just to discuss even more fully where we're going with our IT plans in the future. So, and the reason I'm saying it is that some of the municipalities like Guelph are doing some really nice things with this, and it might be something that we can provide some help and guidance just as we're starting to look into some of these things. Thank you.
Good. Mr. Kirkopoulos?
Through you, Madam Mayor, absolutely, Councillor. I know I'll also reach out to Connie McCutcheon from Niagara Region, who's the lead from an open data perspective. I know I've had a conversation with John Brown in terms of that IT strategy. And so why don't we start with maybe a meeting, you know, with yourself, Councillor Thompson, myself, John, and Connie.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Pachariva.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just a question, an inquiry with respect to the EA that's taking place, Region Road 81, King Street, from Lincoln Avenue Street to the roundabout. Wondering when, I know that there's a public meeting coming up, and I think it's sometime in March, but wondering through our Active Transportation Committee meeting that's taking place this Thursday, is if maybe the committee should take a stance and council also that in that rebuild that, you know, and it is in all of the regions' plans when they redo regional roads, and they've talked about this at the Greater Niagara Circle Route meetings, that we press them for bike lanes. So that's part of it. So wondering if the, you know, committee should make a stand on that Thursday night and it come through committee to council, and then council ratify that, and then we also go and make a delegation or whatever through Mr. Graham to that to stress that this is important. Like having taken that drive along Highway 8 too, and the little S-bend between 13th Street and 15th Street, it's pretty tight through there. So that needs some remediation work as well. You know, as we launch the active transportation, and it's funny because there is a bike route sign up there on Highway 8, and that's a bit of a fit. So just, that's my inquiry.
Okay, so it's a question, and it will go to, it will obviously go to active transportation. So, Mr. Kirkopoulos, do you have any other advice in terms of the routing?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I see Director Graham nodding, so I think it would be a good idea in terms of getting that on the table in terms of where the Active Transportation Committee sits, and then from a staff perspective, we can make sure that that's incorporated and communicated appropriately.
Okay, Councillor, anybody else? Any second thoughts? All right. Councillor, is there any notice of motion? Nothing? There's no closed session? Oh, I'm sorry. Are there announcements? Councillor Rinjima, you had an announcement you said earlier?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Lincoln Chamber of Commerce is having a business after 5 at Fairhof Electric in Jordan, Wednesday, March 1st from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Some of us have been there already, a lovely building that they have there. You can register online at lincolnchamberofcommerce.ca. Bring a friend, because we always like more members.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other announcements? Councillor Brunet?
Thank you, Mayor Easton. Just very quickly, some of these things are kind of redundant now, but I had them on my announcement sheet from the beginning of the meeting, so I'll just quickly touch on them. The advisory committee, the Active Transportation Advisory Committee, we launched in December. We had a great meeting in January. Our second meeting of the year is this Thursday, the 23rd. We have 5 public members on our committee who are very engaged, very excited. We've got the support of Jackie Gervais from the region of Niagara. We've gone through a terms of reference, and we're working on a work plan that will obviously come back through this council. To Councillor Patriva's comment about bike routes, I mean, it's something that we talked about in the workshops, and certainly Walter and our director are certainly all over that in terms of bike route coming out of the roundabout and going towards Green Lane. So I certainly endorse what Chair Patriva is talking about in terms of bringing that to active transportation. The only other things, and again, some of this has been talked about, I have 2 meetings that I'll be representing this council on at West Lincoln Memorial Hospital, our first meeting of the year, as well as our infrastructure meeting at the region. I'll be attending and reporting back on those after the next week. And as others talked about in earlier, for all those at home, Team Lincoln, we need your support for the coldest night of the year this Saturday, the 25th. We need to hit our goal and come out on top. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Mike, you have a comment? Mr. Clerk has a comment.
Sorry.
You had your chance, obviously.
That was some comment.
Just wanted to advise that the town of Lincoln is developing a vision, mission, and values statements for the municipality, governing the long-term vision of the municipality. We've had a number of focus sessions planned and prepared, but in newspapers starting Thursday, we will be providing notice of a public session open to any member of the public who wishes to attend. The session will be held on Tuesday, March 7th, from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Fleming Center. If you look for the ad, we will have it posted on our website. It'll be in the newspapers. You can please RSVP if you're interested in attending, just so that we have some numbers and we can make the necessary space arrangements by emailing us info@lincoln.ca or calling us at 905-563-8205. So once again, we encourage public participation in that process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rinjima, seconded by Councillor McPherson, that leave be given to introduce the following bylaw, number 2017-14, to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by council resolution. Pleasure on the motion. The motion is carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Rinjima, seconded by Councillor McPherson, that bylaw number 2017-14, read a first time, be now read a second and third time, and finally passed, and that the mayor and clerk sign and seal the said bylaw. The pleasure on the motion. The motion is carried. Ladies and gentlemen, the business of this council meeting having been completed as circulated and posted, I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, Mr.